I want to welcome you to the Engineer Your Success podcast. My name is Dr. James Bryant, your host for today's show. I usually end the podcast with this, but I'm going to begin it with this. Thus, many people know what to do. Fewer people know how to do it. And there is a select group of people that actually follow through, do it, and they are living the life of their dreams. It is my goal and my desire for you to be part of that select few. Welcome to this podcast. So, on this podcast, we provide tools, tips, and techniques to help you achieve success both in business and life. And so, before we get started in on today's episode, which is a follow-on episode from last week, I want to start with just some gratitude. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for you, the podcast listeners, and I'm also grateful for Nadine. So Nadine works for Streamline Podcast, the company that I use to produce the Engineer Your Success podcast. Nadine, I want to thank you for all of your efforts and the work that you do on producing these episodes. So it is with my gratitude that I am saying thank you. Okay. So last week, we talked about the top 5 personal development activities that you can do right now. I actually did a blog post about that last week. All of the social media assets that went out were all about these 5 things. And those 5 things were: number one, make time to think and reflect and do a year in review. Number two was to celebrate your achievements. I really think that we don't celebrate enough. Number three was practice self compassion. Number four was start a practice of gratitude. So practice gratitude. And number five was to dream. Yes, just dream big, start thinking about the things that you want to achieve and what you want to do. So today's episode, we are going to really zero in and get down on that first personal development activity, the year in review. And so the title of this episode is Year in Review: The Best Way to Prepare for a Successful 2023. So as this year comes to a close, it really is time to step back and review what is going on in our lives over the past 12 months. So it's important for us to assess where we are so that we really can set ourselves up for success in 2023. So, doing a comprehensive year in review is one of the most effective ways to gain clarity and perspective about our lives, as well as to understand those areas where we may need some improvement. So, a year in review should include taking stock of all aspects of life. So, all aspects of life. So, I'm talking career, business, health, relationships, your finances, giving, service, every area of life where you want to continue to improve, or those areas of life that, when you consider, help to give you a sense of having a meaningful and a full life. So this process really helps you to look objectively at your successes and your challenges or failures, and it allows you to make mindful decisions about how to best move forward into the next year with intention, with focus, and without frustration. So, review and reflection. So, at the end of each year, I do think, and it's important to take that time to reflect. So, right now, it may be a perfect time. This is going to air the week between before Christmas. So, Christmas is on a Sunday. So, you may have some time off for the holidays, and you may absolutely actually have some time to actually sit down and reflect on the year that was. And if you do, I want you to take some time and really reflect on this past year and all that has happened, right? So it's time to look back, to appreciate, to learn, to grow from what has been experienced. It can help to give you just make sense of your lives, as well as provide you the opportunity to plan for the future. So this is that time where you stop and you think about your actions and decisions from a different perspective because you do want to look at those things objectively. So we're just going to walk you through just a very brief exercise, right? And so the tools that are needed in order for you to get the maximum value from this exercise is one, set aside some time for reflection without distraction. Turn your phone off. You don't want to be around the television. Tell your wife, your significant other, the kids, hey, I need 20 minutes, or go some 20 minutes to kind of sit down and reflect, or whatever time frame you think you need. You also, it would be helpful if you have your goals that you set for 2022. If you don't have your goals, you still can actually go through this exercise the way that I'm going to lead you through the exercise. But if you do have your goals, it gives you just some additional data that you can look at. Also, if you have data sources from your habit trackers, whether you're doing the Fitbit or Apple Health, or you're looking at tasks and you're kind of checking off the things that you're actually doing on a day to day or weekly basis or a monthly basis, that's something to have handy as well. So you can look at your performance over this past year and begin to project what performance or improvements you may want to make for the future years. The last two things are not optional. So these two things you absolutely need to bring to this exercise in doing your year in review. Number one, an open mind to see opportunities. So when you get to a point and you're looking at something that you haven't been able to accomplish, or something that where you fell short, I want you to see those as opportunities. Have an open mind to see those as opportunities, opportunities for you to grow, opportunities for you to develop something new, opportunities for you to collaborate with someone. Look at those things as opportunities. And the second thing that's not optional is apply self compassion. It's very difficult to complete a year in review if you're stuck in this cycle of beating yourself up over things that you didn't accomplish, over things where you fell short. So I talked about this last week. If you did not listen to that, you can link to that one, that episode. We'll put a link to that one in the show notes, and you'll be able to go back and hear. But I talked about being able to apply self compassion. Okay. And the other thing too is that this exercise does not have to be completed in one sitting. You may want to break it up depending on the times that you have or the time available that you have. You may want to do it as part of your morning quiet time or reflection time. That is totally up to you. So you're going to find a place and a pace that works well for you. And remember, always be kind to yourself as you explore your personal and professional development. So, what are some questions to consider? So, here are the questions that I consider for the year in review. And I consider these questions that I'm going to ask for each area of life that brings fulfillment to me, or that needs to be clicking on all cylinders for me to kind of feel like I'm getting a win. And for me, it's a mix of those things that are in my professional and my personal life, because I believe that, anything that happens to me in my professional life is going to impact the way that I show up at home, and the things that happen to me at home impacts the way that I show up at work. There may not be an immediate impact, but it is an impact. And I define success by winning at work and at home. And so I would really encourage you, when you're thinking about this, to think both of business and life. So think about your career, your business, your health, finances, family, relationships, and again, any other thing that you would consider you really want to be doing well, for you to have that point of joy and belief, and feel that you're living an exceptional life. So the questions are not very complex. They're pretty easy. But no, they're pretty simple, but not easy. So here we go. The first kind of area or quadrant is what worked well. So, what worked well for you this past year? What was your biggest accomplishment this year? What accomplishments are you proud of, and why? What was the most meaningful accomplishment that you had, and why? And what most excites you about the things that went well for you this year? For me, one of the things that is went through this exercise that really worked well for me is the transition from my W-2 to a full-time entrepreneur in launching Engineer Your Success, the consulting, coaching, and leadership development firm. So that has been a pretty smooth transition for me. I've been very blessed and fortunate in having that transition. But that's one of the things that absolutely worked well for me from the time I started planning to the time I hired a coach, from the time that I started attending some additional masterminds to the time revenue started being generated. All of those things kind of worked pretty well for me this year. And I'm really excited about what the future holds. What the next kind of area to consider is what did not work well. So, what challenges have you had to overcome this year? How did you grow through those challenges? What did you learn about yourself through this past year's challenges? And what are some of the missed opportunities from this past year? I use challenges. Another way to frame it is, you know, what failures have you had to overcome this year? How did you go through, or, how did you grow through those failures? What did you learn about yourself going through this past year's failures? And what were some missed opportunities that you had? So, for some people, they don't like using the word failure. I'm okay with failure because I think that your success is on the other side of failure. When you get comfortable with trying and not succeeding, and you continue to push forward because you know that your success is on the other end of that, then you don't see failure as your enemy. You see failure as a part of your success journey. For me, when I think of failures, one of the big achievements that I had this past year is that I ran my first 10K. It's absolutely phenomenal. For those of you to look at this video, I have a picture, right behind me of when I was running, and me and my buddy were there. It's like it was great. It was absolutely phenomenal. So that was a big accomplishment. But the failure for me is that not I didn't have another activity or another thing planned after that. And so after running the 10K, feeling great, said I'm going to take a break. And that break lasted for many, many months. Now I'm back running, I'm back training, but it took a long time to kind of get back again to start running and to start training. And so one of the things that I learned is not to do that again, and to make sure that I'm not only that I'm celebrating every day and celebrating every step, that I just don't celebrate the 10K, but I celebrate the 2 mile run. I just don't celebrate crossing the finish line. I celebrate signing up for the race. And just this continuous cycle of celebration and picking up momentum from the small things. The next thing is the lessons learned. And that gets in. So it's what worked well, what did not work well, what lessons did you learn? So, what did you learn about yourself through your accomplishments? What lessons did you learn through your challenges or failures? If there was a sentence or a phrase that sums up this past year, what would it be? So, just really being able to articulate that and sum that up, and if there was a one word that you could use to describe your year past, what would it be? For me, this year was all about new beginnings. The first race, launching the business, a lot of new beginnings for me in a year of transition, transitioning from W-2 to entrepreneurship. And so it was a really meaningful year for me. And the last thing to consider in your year in review is how will you leverage the lessons that you've learned this year into making next year your best year ever? So it's not enough to know what worked well. It's not enough to know what didn't work well. It's not even enough to just understand the lessons that you've learned. But what I really want you to do and really want to hit home is leveraging both your successes and your failures so that you can help plan and design and execute and live the life of your dreams. Because a year review is essential for you to do that, right? Um, so there's several possibilities in terms of next steps that you can take once you've gotten all this down. And those steps, if you don't have one already, it's building your vision for what 2023 looks like for you. We do have the Build Your Vision workbook. There's a link in the show notes to that. If you go to the Sleek bio link, that'll take you to all of the different links of the tools that we have available for the podcast listeners. And so that's one thing that you can do. The other thing that you can do is begin to develop your goals. So if you have your vision of what 2023 looks like, then you can develop your goals. So the question is, what is the next step that you are going to take? Because I want you to have an absolutely wonderful Christmas, very happy holiday. Merry Christmas to you all. Next week, we are going to talk about one of those next steps. Is it going to be build your vision? Is it going to be developing your goals? You have to tune in to see. Listen, many people know what to do. Fewer people know how to do it, and a select group of people actually follow through and do it. As we started this podcast, I want to make sure that you are part of that select few, and I want you to be great this week. Thanks.